Good evening. How are you? Well, the Jefferson Report is somewhat amazed because it's about 81 degrees and it's as comfortable as it could possibly be. And the road is lit up with this marvelous sunshine. This is a beautiful evening out and no wind. So it's kind of an ideal day. I found Camelot in the evening, if you remember, at least in the musical. They talk about how it only rains at night, and in the morning everything's fine, beautiful. So, how is that? Well, the world is not exactly there. There is some dramatic stuff going on in the house that I find pretty interesting. And I can't say we're breaking a logjam here. And I don't know if there was a deal between the Speaker, Johnson, and Jeffries, the minority leader in the House. But they passed the bill for aid to Ukraine and other nation states and to help those who are besieged by these warlike surroundings. And you wonder if the cooperation was decided to extend to helping Johnson maintain his speakership against the yahoos, particularly in the Freedom Forum, who want to throw him out. And Ms. Crazy Green has said she's seeking to file her motion to vacate to get rid of the speaker for dealing with the Democrats. And the question, if called, the Democrats might help the Republicans table the motion because there's only a 2-vote margin now among the Republicans. I hope you follow all that. In short, Green is kind of at the end of her rope for her radical goings-on. Now, I'm not saying that the Democrats are a monolith, but this is a kind of deal that does not upset me in this sense. Congress gets to go forward without changing a speaker. Do the Republicans give up anything? Well, if they can get their entire body into a majority, then they can do that. If they can't, they have to do what is normal log rolling in a legislative body, which is they have to compromise with the Democrats. In other words, governance might break out. So we find strange bedfellows in this arrangement because No Jacket Jordan agrees that the speaker is doing fine and opposes a motion to vacate, which is very interesting for him. Now, are we Democrats helping Republicans look better? I don't think so. They can't get away from the things they've said and done. So among women, how do they get around the fact of killing Roe v. Wade? If you're a person of color, how do they get around failing to do anything for equal justice? And it goes on and on. How do they get past the fact that for so long they resisted opposing Putin? So the book is open, and it leans against the Republicans being able to take over the Senate or the House right now. But stay tuned. There's a lot of time between now and Election Day, and who knows what will happen. Global protest. We're talking about the students now. And the only note I would add to that is people who are young believe that what they were told. And this wasn't about the tooth fairy. It wasn't about Santa Claus. It's what we were told about what government is and what it does. And then when you presume it will do those things and it doesn't, then you have chaos. And some use it for their own crazy advantage, but it's a force not to be denied. And we see that Colombia is literally cleaning house and pressing discipline against those who participated. and arresting them and throwing them off campus. And they may leave that vague until after the commencement. Back in '68, these cases were basically erased. I represented one woman in a complex fraud case in New York, and they tried to deny her bail because she'd been arrested for protesting. And the judge turned to me and said, "What do you think of that, Mr. Flannery?" I said, "I think she wears it like a red badge of courage." And by the way, she wasn't convicted of anything. It was a charge. And so she was not denied bail. And the Attorney General, New York Attorney General, was prosecuting the case. And it's like she didn't even get it. She didn't understand why she lost it. It's amazing. But that's, so when you have the young, you often have true believers. And they don't think it should be about fundraising and lobbying and things like that. The government's supposed to do what it's supposed to do according to the laws and the rules and the Constitution. Now we're in a much more difficult situation. And, you know, one example of many is Republicans going on the air and making fun of the fact that Trump has been held in contempt. And they think that's hilarious. This is like a scene in a bad movie where a street gang does something and they get away with it because they're all cut from the same rotten cloth. And that's what we have on the Hill. We have Republican mobsters, gangmen, and with a few crazy women mixed in. So let's see, my environmental notice today is that, you know, somebody asked me if there are always heat waves in the Philippines. And what I should add is now there's a report out today that there are significant heat waves, unprecedented, from the Philippines to India, in Japan, Bangladesh, just name it, Thailand, Vietnam. And so this is not an isolated occurrence, and it is something that we should be thinking about. Our government should be acting about. Now, some turn to prayer, and God bless them. And what they do on their own is fine with me. But here's the thing. This day, and I don't know which day it is a National Day of Prayer. A National Day of Prayer. Why is a government that supposedly espouses separation of church and state, why is it doing such a thing? I don't get it. And it is because we're hypocrites. Our government is a big hypocrite. You know, in God we trust, opening the sessions of Congress with a prayer. I can't, since my childhood, I can't get over the contradictory nature of people who can hold two entirely opposite things in poise and try to operate within the contradiction of terms, good and evil, up and down, back and forth. And if that's the way you think, how can you come out with anything but bad ideas? Beats me. Trump, hopping around, he was pounded again. As you know, yesterday they had the sanctions against him, which some Republicans think is a funny thing. And we'll see if Trump thinks that when they put him in the hoosegow for a couple hours, because he'll test it. He just can't help himself. And Davidson, the lawyer who handled the operation, he just nailed it up one side and down the other. So that's the way things go. There's a very interesting story about the environment down in Chile. A whole bunch of environmentalists for millions and millions of dollars are actually buying a mountain. How about that, to save it? And they're buying it from the fellow who wanted to keep compromising it. And it's a shame that that's what we have to do to maintain amazing natural beauty. In terms of natural beauty, Todd Blanch is not looking so good these days. Todd Blanch, you may remember the name, Blanch, pale for fear, is counsel to Trump at the trial. And apparently it's leaking out that Trump is very upset with his counsel. And this is like a self-inflicted wound, because Trump is of the view that he's the legal mastermind, and that he should tell his lawyer what his lawyer should do. And since Trump is in fact not a legal mastermind, when his client does it, it fails. And you may remember in the case of Blanch, the judge said at one point in response to an argument by Blanch that you're losing all credibility. As a lawyer, you got to correct that. Yeah, you can get up and you can say something that maybe you do believe, and it's stupid. Judge calls you on it, and you should slap your forehead and say, yeah, you're right. I had an occasion in that courthouse many years ago in which judge called me up among the lawyers to argue the issue that we had all agreed I would argue. And since it was early in our joint arguments, I thought the judge was going to deny it, and he was just calling upon me to get rid of it. But instead, he followed it. And I had a second issue which dovetailed that. And I said, how about this other one? And the judge looked at me and he kind of smiled. And he says, I don't see that one the same way. So I don't know if he thought it was frivolous, but he wasn't granting it. That's what a civil legal courtroom is like and should be like. And it's interesting because the motion that the court did grant applied to a bunch of the defendants. There were a number of defendants on trial in that case. And so, well, you take your wins where you get them. Now, Ellie Honig, who has been filling in a little bit, I think, to give some distance between the judge's remark about Blanch, said, you got to pick your battles. Well, let's roll that back a little bit. If you're picking your battles and you're still losing, you don't have a formula for success. Now, Trump, he keeps saying that his ideal lawyer would be Roy Cohn, who died in 1986. Roy Cohn was very comfortable with mobsters and all sorts of people. He'd been prosecuted himself, defended himself at trial, and got acquittals for himself. But toward the end of his life, they came down on him for tax fraud, and they attacked his bar license in New York, all of which struck me as true at a distance. And what Trump is really saying is he wants a lawyer who represents mobsters. And what he ignores is that the best of the so-called mob bar, some of those people are astounding lawyers, and they find arguments that really do change a case. Now, I don't believe our boy Todd Blanch is among that cut. And you can try a lot of cases, and you do learn things that surprise you and that you can use. And Todd Blanch, our man, if I understand it correctly, this is only his first or second trial as a defense counsel. There's no way to get practice except to do, but he's not a young man. He gave up the profession he had with a law firm to have this one client. Makes you think of The Godfather. I have a special practice. I only have one client. But Bobby Duvall in that role was no Todd Blanch. he delivered. And if there's a reason that Trump's lawyers aren't delivering, it's because Trump is not letting them do what they can do, which I don't think is much in this case. And I keep hearing people say things like, oh, why didn't they prosecute Trump if it was a good case? Because the Department of so-called Injustice under Barr was under orders to destroy the case and basically push Berman, the U.S. attorney, who was looking at the case, out of the office. That's why there was no federal case against Trump for what Cohen faced. Interesting stuff. From time to time, when you've done law for a number of years, which I have done, you see some really special people. And there's a fellow, Werner Spitz. He just died at 97. He was a forensic examiner, and he was one of the elite in that very difficult but fascinating specialty. And I had commented for ABC on the O.J. Simpson criminal trial, and I had predicted he was going to win, in large part because if the gloves don't fit, you must acquit, which is what they did. But then there was a civil case, wrongful death action, and in that case we had Mrs. Simpson, who had been killed, and Spitz found that there were cuts on her left arm, and her skin was under the nails of O.J. Simpson. Powerful evidence. There was more, but that was the piece that struck me. So we say goodbye to a fine forensic examiner who always said he didn't come in and give what he was asked to give, but studied the evidence, followed it to its conclusion, and then said what he could say about it. And he had some spectacular autopsies to review. So that's what I got for today. It's beautiful, it's comfortable, and I wave to you from my cathedral of trees, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.